There was a day I will never forget. A normal day, like any other. But something changed inside me. I was in a room full of people, students, professionals, strangers. Everyone was talking, laughing, sharing stories. I stood there, frozen. I knew what I wanted to say. The sentence was right there in my mind. But it wouldn't come out. My lips stayed closed. My voice was locked inside me. I watched the conversation move like a river, and I was drowning in silence. People spoke so fast, with energy, with life. I felt like a shadow standing in the corner. My heart was beating fast, but I was invisible. Have you ever felt that way? Like your mouth is full of words, but your voice is gone. That moment broke something in me. It was more than fear. It was shame. Deep, painful shame. I kept thinking, why can't I speak? What's wrong with me? And maybe you're asking yourself the same question right now. Maybe you're standing in your own silent room. But here's the real question, how long are you going to wait before you finally speak? People think not speaking English is just a small problem. But it's not. It cuts deep. It touches everything. I lost job chances. I avoided social events. I stayed quiet when I had ideas. I hid from people because I was afraid they might speak to me. Not because I didn't want to talk, I was dying to connect, but because I knew I couldn't keep up. Every conversation was a battle I lost before it began. Even when someone asked me something simple like, "How are you?" I would panic. My brain went blank. My hands would sweat. My voice. It would crack, shake, or disappear. And the worst part? The look on people's faces. The confusion. The pity. The forced smile. It made me feel small. Like I didn't belong in the world they were living in. I started asking myself, will I always be like this? Just nodding, smiling, pretending to understand. The truth is, you can only stay quiet for so long before it breaks your spirit. I knew I had to change, but I didn't know how. Not yet. I spent years studying English. You probably did too. Grammar books. Vocabulary lists. Tests. Exams. I passed most of them. I got good marks. Teachers said I was doing well. But I knew the truth. I couldn't speak. Not fluently. Not with confidence. I had no real voice. And that haunted me. In the classroom, we read dialogues from textbooks. "Hello, how are you?" "I'm fine, thank you." It felt fake. Lifeless. No one speaks like that in real life. And yet, that was all we practiced. When I finally met real English speakers, I couldn't understand them. They spoke fast. Their accents were different. They used slang. I felt like a total beginner again. I felt stupid. I remember thinking, why didn't they teach us this? Why didn't they prepare us for real conversations? But it wasn't just the system. It was fear. Even when I had the words, I was too scared to use them. One time in class, I tried to answer a question. I pronounced the word wrong. The whole class laughed. Even the teacher smiled awkwardly. I never forgot that. After that day, I stopped raising my hand. I stayed silent. I built a cage around myself. A classroom cage. It was supposed to be a place of learning. But it became a prison. There was one moment that still burns in my memory. I was at a family dinner. My cousin brought a friend from another country. She didn't speak our language, so I thought, maybe I can try speaking English. I was nervous, but I wanted to be helpful. She asked, "Where is the kitchen?" I smiled and proudly said, "The chicken is that way." Everyone laughed. Not in a kind way. Not with support. They laughed like I had told a joke, a stupid one. My heart dropped. My face turned hot. I laughed too, but inside, I was breaking. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, thinking, I'll never speak English well. I'm not smart enough. I'll always sound stupid. A simple mistake. Just one word. But it cut so deep, it kept me quiet for months. I was afraid of every sentence. I stopped trying. Maybe you've made a mistake like that. And maybe it made you stop too. But what if that mistake is not the end? What if it's the beginning? It's a strange kind of pain, being in a group, but feeling alone. At work, everyone would talk before meetings. Jokes, small talk, laughter. I stood by the coffee machine, pretending to scroll on my phone. I wanted to join. I had things to say. But my English wasn't fast enough. My confidence wasn't strong enough. So I stayed silent. And they stopped noticing me. Slowly, I disappeared. I wasn't invisible, but I felt like I was. And that's the worst part. When people stop expecting you to speak. When they stop turning to you for input. When you start believing your voice has no place. I remember watching them talk and thinking, that should be me. I have ideas too. I have thoughts too. But fear held me back. And fear is a terrible prison. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it whispers. Stay quiet. You're not ready. They'll laugh again. And I listened. Until one day. I didn't. There's a moment that comes when you just can't take it anymore. For me, it was during an interview. I had prepared for weeks. Practiced every question. Memorized answers. I wore my best shirt. I even shaved. I wanted that job so badly. But the second the interviewer spoke English, my body betrayed me. My voice cracked. My answers were slow. I kept saying, sorry, can you repeat? I could feel the pity in his eyes. And the moment he smiled politely and said, okay, we'll be in touch, I knew. I didn't get the job. Again. I walked home in the rain, no umbrella, shoes wet, and for the first time. I let it all out. I cried. Not just tears, real pain. I screamed in the empty street, why can't I do this? That was my rock bottom. But sometimes, hitting the bottom lets you finally push up. I realized, no one is coming to save me. If I want to speak, I have to fight for it. English is not just a language. It's a bridge. And when you can't cross that bridge, you're stuck on your own island. That's how I felt. Alone. People were everywhere, but I was isolated. I wanted to make friends. To travel. To grow. But every time I met someone new, the same fear came up. What if they speak English? What if I don't understand? I stayed in my comfort zone. I said no to parties. No to events. No to life. And slowly, life started saying no to me. But something in me kept whispering, there's more. There's a bigger life waiting for you. And that whisper. It wouldn't go away. One night, I stood in front of the mirror. I looked at myself, really looked. Not just the face, but the pain behind the eyes. I asked myself, is this who I want to be forever? A man with dreams, locked behind silence. A man afraid of words. And in that moment, something changed. Not everything. But something. I said out loud, in English, I want to change. It sounded strange. My accent was heavy. But it was real. And real things have power. That sentence was my first step. It wasn't magic. But it was honest. That night, I didn't sleep much. I stayed up searching, thinking, planning. I didn't know how I would change. But I knew I had to. And sometimes, that's all you need to begin. It wasn't one big moment. It was a collection of small ones. A YouTube video that made me cry. A comment from my little brother. Why don't you speak English like them? A book title I couldn't read. An opportunity one had to say no to, again. All these moments added up. And one day, I just snapped. I told myself, enough. I don't care how slow it is. I don't care how many mistakes I make. I will learn English. I will speak. That decision didn't solve everything. But it gave me power. It gave me direction. And most of all, it gave me hope. The next morning, I woke up early. I didn't know where to start. But I started anyway. I found a simple English story online. Just a few paragraphs. I read it slowly. Then again. Then again. I didn't understand every word. But I felt something, like a fire starting. I whispered the sentences. I read them out loud. I listened to the audio. I copied the voice. It felt awkward. My pronunciation was bad. But for the first time, I didn't care. I kept going. That day, I promised myself, every day. No excuses. I will speak. I will learn. I will not stop. I had finally taken the first real step. The first tool I picked up was a simple one, graded readers. Easy English books for learners. Not textbooks. Not grammar rules. Real stories, but written simply. I found one called Anna and the Missing Ring. Just 40 pages. I read the first page slowly. Very slowly. I didn't understand every word. But I understood enough. More importantly, I felt something. A connection. A rhythm. A flow. I read that little book every day for a week. 10 times. I underlined new words. I spoke the dialogue out loud. I read to myself in the mirror. I didn't care that it was a story for beginners. That story changed something in me. Because for the first time, I was not just studying English. I was living inside it. Characters were speaking in my head. I was starting to think in English. The simple words made it possible. I didn't get tired. I didn't give up. I just kept reading. Every time I finished a book, I felt stronger. My brain was becoming familiar with the rhythm of English. It wasn't about learning everything, it was about repeating something small until it became part of me. That's how I began. Not with fancy courses or expensive apps. Just simple stories, read many, many times. And they opened a door I never thought I could walk through. After 2 weeks of reading, something strange happened. I started talking to myself. At first, it was small things. Okay, I will go now. I am brushing my teeth. The weather is cold today. It felt silly. Crazy, even. But I kept doing it. In my room. In the shower. When walking to work. Out loud, quietly, in my head, didn't matter. I was talking in English. To myself. All day. Every day. I pretended I was on a cooking show. I explained how I was making eggs. I pretended I was in an interview. I gave long fake answers. I described everything around me. The street. The sky. My feelings. And slowly, my mouth got used to the shape of English. My tongue stopped getting stuck. My brain started connecting thoughts to words, in real time. This was not school English. This was real practice. No fear. No pressure. No one to laugh. Just me, building my voice one sentence at a time. Talking to yourself might sound strange. But it's powerful. It forces you to create the language from inside. It makes you think faster. And for me, it gave me a safe place to practice, before the real world heard me. The third weapon I found was YouTube. And no, I didn't search for boring grammar lectures. I searched for real people, real English, real emotion. I found channels where native speakers told stories. Daily routines. Life advice. Personal growth. English with subtitles. I watched one video about a man climbing a mountain. His voice was strong, but clear. I repeated his words. I copied his tone. I paused every 5 seconds. I said the sentence out loud. I shadowed him, like a mirror. I did this every single night. For an hour. Sometimes more. I didn't understand everything. But I learned the sounds. The music of English. I learned how native speakers pause. How they stretch words. How they laugh, whisper, emphasize. It was like learning music. Some nights I cried because I couldn't keep up. Some nights I felt stupid. But I never stopped. I wrote down sentences. I memorized phrases. I even tried to speak with their confidence, standing taller, breathing deeper. YouTube became my classroom, my teacher, and my inspiration. And the best part? It was free. Every video gave me another piece of the puzzle. Another rhythm. Another sentence I could carry with me. I was learning, not just English, I was learning how to sound human in English. One thing I did differently this time was, I stopped being afraid of mistakes. I made a mountain of them. Every day. Bad pronunciation. Wrong words. Grammar. A mess. But I didn't stop. I talked anyway. I wrote anyway. I practiced anyway. The old me would freeze at every mistake. Now, I welcomed them. I kept a small notebook. I called it my mistake book. Every time I said something wrong, I wrote it down. Then I wrote the correction. Then I used the correct sentence 10 times. Out loud. In writing. In my self-talk. I go to the store. I went to the store. Again. 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 And slowly, the new sentences replaced the broken ones. People think fluency is about perfection. It's not. Fluency is about courage. The courage to sound foolish. To fall. To be corrected. To try again. Every mistake became a step forward. I made more mistakes in 5 months than most people do in 5 years. And that's exactly why I improved so fast. The fifth method I used saved my soul, journaling. Every night before bed, I opened a notebook and wrote 1 page in English. No rules. No judgment. Just emotion. Just thoughts. I wrote about my fears. My dreams. My bad days. My good ones. At first, I could only write basic sentences. Today was hard. I felt sad. I want to speak better. But over time, my sentences grew. I felt invisible at work again. I smiled and nodded, but I wanted to scream. I want to find my voice. I want to live louder. My journal became a mirror. I didn't just write English. I found myself in English. When I read those pages now, I see a man trying. A man changing. A man becoming. Writing helped me process the pain. It gave me space to grow. And grammar? I didn't worry about it. I focused on expression. On meaning. On truth. Journaling gave me a place to feel, reflect, and heal, all in English. I used every small moment. Every silent pause in my day became a lesson. While brushing my teeth, I described my morning in English. While walking, I named everything I saw: tree, car, girl with red dress. At the store, I tried to think in English: how much does this cost? Should I buy this? Even waiting in line, I practiced conversations in my head. Hi, how are you? I'm looking for this. These small things might seem useless, but they built habits. English stopped being something I studied. It became something I lived. The more I used it in quiet, private moments, the more it came naturally in public ones. You don't need hours of study. You need small drops of effort, every day. And they add up. Every whisper. Every sentence. Every second of English you use, it becomes part of your life. This might sound strange, but I stopped treating English like a subject. I started treating it like an emotion. I didn't want to just speak it. I wanted to feel it. So I connected English to things I loved. I listened to sad songs with English lyrics and cried with them. I watched motivational speeches that gave me goosebumps. I watched movies that made me laugh, in English. I made English personal. I didn't care about test scores. I cared about connection. I started collecting beautiful English sentences. Like, this too shall pass. Or, you are enough. I wrote them on my wall. I said them when I felt lost. English wasn't just a tool. It became a language of healing. A language of growth. When you connect your heart to a language, it becomes part of your soul. And that's when real fluency begins. There is no perfect moment to start speaking. You'll never feel ready. I learned that the hard way. One day, I forced myself to speak to a stranger online. A language exchange partner. My hands were shaking. My voice was weak. I made 20 mistakes in 10 minutes. But she didn't laugh. She helped. She smiled. She corrected me kindly. That conversation gave me hope. It also taught me something important: waiting to feel ready is a trap. Speak before you're ready. Make the mistakes. Feel the fear. But speak anyway. Every real conversation will teach you more than 100 grammar exercises. And the more you speak, the more your fear disappears. Slowly. Silently. Until one day, it's gone. Perfection is a prison. And I lived in it for years. Always afraid of saying the wrong thing. Of sounding bad. Of looking foolish. But one day, I asked myself, what if perfect English is not the goal? What if connection is the goal? And that changed everything. I stopped correcting myself mid-sentence. I stopped worrying if my accent was good. I just spoke. I focused on being clear, honest, and kind. That's what people remember. Not your grammar. Not your vocabulary. But your presence. Your energy. Your willingness. When I stopped chasing perfection, I started learning faster. Because I was finally free. Free to be a beginner. Free to fail. Free to grow. In the end, it all came down to this: consistency. I didn't study for 10 hours once a week. I studied for 1 hour every day. I read. I spoke. I listened. I wrote. Every single day. Even when I was tired. Even when I was busy. Even when I felt hopeless. I made it a ritual. A sacred moment. Like brushing my teeth. Like eating. I didn't wait for motivation. I used discipline. And slowly, the results came. Not fast. But real. Day by day, sentence by sentence, I was building a new voice. A new life. It wasn't about talent. It was about showing up. Every single day. It happened on a random Tuesday. Nothing special. I was in a coffee shop, reading a book in English. A tourist came in. She looked lost. She asked the barista a question, but he didn't understand. I heard her voice, and before I could stop myself, I stood up and said, "Do you need help?" My voice didn't shake. My heart didn't pound. I didn't rehearse it. It just came out. Naturally. She smiled. "Yes, please. Do you know where the train station is?" I gave her directions, in full English. We even laughed about something. When she left, I sat down, stunned. I looked at my hands. They weren't shaking. I felt calm. Confident. Alive. I didn't just speak English that day. I spoke with freedom. And that freedom, I had earned it. Through pain. Through effort. Through every moment I had once wanted to quit. That day was small. Just a few minutes. But inside me, it was an explosion. I whispered to myself, I did it. A week after that coffee shop moment, I was on a video call with someone from the US. A small language exchange group. I was nervous, but I spoke anyway. After I shared my thoughts, the man smiled and said, "Wow, your English is really clear. You sound great." I froze. Not because I didn't understand, but because I did. Those words hit something deep. For years, I only heard the bad, "Your accent is strange." Say it again. What did you mean? But now, someone was saying I sounded good. Not perfect, just good. Clear. That compliment became a light in me. I started walking taller. Smiling more. Believing. Belief is dangerous, in a beautiful way. Once you believe you can speak, you start speaking more. You stop waiting. You start living. That one sentence from a stranger gave me more fuel than 100 textbooks ever could. One night, after dinner, I sat down and played a movie I loved as a kid, but this time, I watched it with no subtitles. Just English. No translation. I expected to get lost. I expected to fail. But minute by minute, scene by scene, I understood. Not everything. But enough. The jokes. The emotions. The story. I laughed at the right moments. I cried at the right scenes. I realized something powerful, I was no longer learning English. I was living in English. I was thinking in it. Feeling in it. Reacting to it. That night, I didn't just understand a movie. I understood a truth, English was no longer outside of me. It was inside. And that changes everything. The person I was before, afraid, quiet, unsure, he started fading. Slowly. Day by day. And in his place, a new version of me was rising. Stronger. Louder. Braver. I wasn't just someone who spoke English. I was someone who could stand up. Speak out. Be seen. My confidence didn't just grow in English. It grew in life. I started saying yes to things I used to avoid. Speaking up in meetings. Making new friends. Applying for jobs I once thought were too good for me. This wasn't just language. This was identity. I was becoming someone I was proud of. And every English sentence I spoke helped build that person. The world feels bigger when you speak English, but also, somehow, smaller. Borders feel less like walls, and more like doors. I started messaging people from different countries. Asking questions. Sharing ideas. Making friends I never would have met without English. I joined online communities. Read books from authors I'd never heard of before. Watched speeches that changed how I thought about life. I began to see things differently, culture, success, failure, even love. English became my bridge to the world. And the more I walked across it, the more I realized. I belonged. Not just in my country. Not just in my comfort zone. I belonged anywhere my words could reach. The greatest change wasn't my vocabulary. It wasn't my accent. It was something deeper, something you can't measure. It was the feeling of being heard. Truly heard. For the first time in my life, people listened to my thoughts, in another language. My ideas. My stories. My questions. My voice had finally found space in the world. And that voice, my English voice, it came from struggle. From discipline. From hundreds of quiet nights where I wanted to give up but didn't. I earned this voice. And it changed my life. If you asked me today what I gained from learning English, would not say grammar or vocabulary. I would say discipline. Resilience. Courage. English taught me how to show up even when it's hard. How to fall and rise again. How to be patient with myself. How to chase something, even when no one claps for me. I became a better person because I learned English. Not just a better speaker, a better human. I learned to listen more. To notice more. To connect deeper. English gave me more than a skill. It gave me strength. Through English, I discovered something powerful. I don't have to wait for permission to grow. I don't have to wait for a school, a teacher, or the perfect plan. I can teach myself. I can build myself. I can change myself. I became the student of my own life. And that changed everything. English was just the beginning. Now I know, if I can learn this, I can learn anything. If I can face this fear, I can face any fear. This journey gave me more than language. It gave me a new mind. A new way of seeing the world. A new way of being me. Now, I want to speak directly to you. You, the person watching this. Maybe you feel stuck. Maybe you've been silent for too long. Maybe you're scared to sound bad or broken. But let me tell you this. I was exactly where you are. Afraid. Ashamed. Full of doubt. But I didn't stay there. I fought my way out, one sentence at a time. You don't need talent. You don't need perfect grammar. You need hunger. You need fire. You need to show up when no one's watching. I am not special. I am not gifted. I'm just someone who refused to give up. If I can do it, so can you. But you have to decide. Will you speak today, or stay silent forever? The pain you feel right now? Use it. The silence you live in? Break it. The fear inside you? Face it. There is no magic. Only effort. Only practice. Only daily decisions to rise when it would be easier to hide. You are not too late. You are not too old. You are not too broken. You are just beginning. And this time, you're going to finish what you started. Speak. Fail. Speak again. This is your story now. Your voice is waiting. Pick up the pen, and start writing it in English.